What's going on, everyone? This is Maroon Radio. I'm back again for episode 2. Today I have a very special guest. He is a photographer, videographer, overall visual artist who have worked with some of your favorite artists. He has such a rugged and dynamic style, yet colorful and strangely warm and comforting. I'm here with Riqueros.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So first off, I want to get into just the basics. Where'd you grow up? How? And how'd you get a camera in your hands, just to start?
Yeah, I grew up in Guayaquil, Ecuador, so I am Latino. I lived there basically since I was a child, and then eventually moved to the U.S. when I was 12 years old, and lived in Texas briefly. And then after I turned 19, 20 years old, and I ended up in New York. And then from then on, I just started hustling in terms of getting minimum wage paying jobs and stuff like that. I wasn't even really doing photography at the time, or even considering it. And then it was my brother who was doing photography, and he had more or less transitioned from that phase, but he still had a camera.
Right.
And and I was like, hey, I want to sort of express myself. Can I just borrow your camera or something? And I just literally started that way.
That's dope. How old are you now, if I might ask?
I'm 31.
Okay, so it's been a cool 11 years.
It's been a cool 11 years, but in New York, but then I started photography when I was 22.
So did you see yourself taking it as far as you've taken it thus far, or was it kind of just I'm picking it up to express myself, and it was purely just something to do?
I mean, I picked it up, but I remember when I actually started to see I may have something here. I remember setting myself goals in terms of within the next 5 years, I want to do an album cover for a major artist.
Right.
So I would always set myself these small goals so I can be okay, that's the thing I need to achieve and get to.
Okay.
That definitely helped a lot.
What was your first camera? Do you remember the model of it, or?
Well, it wasn't my camera, but it was my brother's camera, and it was if I remember correctly, it was a Canon 40 something. It was a 40S,
okay.
40 something. Yeah, I
Not
don't
too
remember
many
exactly.
different lenses to switch between, or he was pretty.
Yeah, I mean, he had a zoom lens, and then I basically just played with that because it's very versatile in terms of going wide and going tight. So I didn't really have to do a lot of switching. Not necessarily the best for that kind of stuff, but as a learning photographer, it did allow me to explore different angles and stuff.
What were some of the first things you were shooting? Because obviously you didn't get to work with all the artists off rip, all these big names. So it was were you more of just candids of your family or friends, or was it environment? What were you taking pictures of? What were your initial subjects?
It was me. I would just
Word?
I would just set up the camera on a tripod or on a counter or something like that. Set a timer on it, and then just me myself posing, lighting up the room or the scene with typing in on the computer screen on YouTube green screen or something, just to get a green light going on, things like that. So I would just use the TV monitors, the computer screens to light situations up, stage myself, and then that's when I basically started saying I may have something. And I guess for me to have more control, I was I need to get other people to be in front of it. That way I can be behind it.
Right.
And then I just started asking strangers, really. I would just go on social media, Instagram or, things like that. And
What time was this? What years did you say?
This was probably 2014.
Okay, early Instagram.
Yeah, early. And I would just find people that were in New York and just be hey, I like your look. I would love to photograph with you or something.
Were they all kind of models or artsy types? Because I'm thinking around that time Tumblr was still popular and people were still starting to kind of dip their toes in that. So what kind of models were you seeking out? Were they male, female, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it was both, but I guess mostly women.
Okay.
But I definitely I was trying, because I was just starting photography, so I was trying with agency models or just regular people. I've learned over the years I prefer to just shoot with regular people, people who are just not agency models, who have this very structured
Ego
look.
or like ego at all, or just they kind of come with their own like.
No, I think it's just more or less because.
Hurdles to jump through.
No, not necessarily that. I think it's just a preference in terms of when I shoot with like an agency model or someone who has like a very like commercial look, the image feels fake to me. It feels like very like like you can tell it's. I mean, obviously my stuff is staged, but it feels like even more staged. What I like about just shooting with like friends or strangers or just like you know what I mean, like not commercial people. And it feels more authentic. It feels like I'm
not trained.
Right. It feels like I'm casting someone because I'm like, you can fit that environment. And it makes the image more believable.
That's dope to hear, because between that and then you saying your early years of you just kind of playing with the lighting, with the green screen, whatever you would Google and project onto yourself, I see that in your work today. So that's really cool to see that you kind of had that a sense of self in your work early. What are some obstacles early on you faced with taking photography on as a profession? Because it's a million people with cameras, but not as many people make it as far as you did so far. So what were some of those difficulties in terms of trying to pivot and actually reap the benefits of this?
Yeah. Honestly, it was just finding your style, like finding something that makes you stand out. When I first started, I was definitely more or less, being fed social media and Instagram and Tumblr and, things like that. And I was definitely trying to replicate a look that other photographers were accomplishing at the time. And then I just started telling myself, like, if I was to put, at the time, 10 of my images and 10 of this photographer's images and 10 of this person and just put them all together, I wouldn't be able to tell who's who because everybody looks the same.
Right.
So then that's when I was like, I need to find a way to like take myself out of that, at least a little bit, so that people can say like, oh, that looks like something like Israel would shoot or something. Like give people a reason to hire me, basically.
Okay.
So yeah, that was probably the biggest hurdle, trying to find that thing that ticks for me and other people, outside of just like the business and networking aspect that comes with being in the entertainment industry, I guess.
Okay. Now, off camera, you described yourself as an introvert. So I was wondering, when it comes to now selling yourself and like, putting yourself out there, how did you overcome that? Like, how did you tell yourself, like, my work deserves to be in those spaces? Was it just the time kind of refining your work, or was it off the gate? Like, I have to like psych myself up to this right now?
It was that. It was psyching myself up. Like, I just had to. It was one of those things where it was like, I didn't really go to college.
Yeah.
So being self-taught, and I guess saying to myself, like, there's something here that I feel like I can sell to somebody. Obviously, I'm not the most extroverted person, but I was like, I know there's an artist out there that would love to do some sort of like visual cover or something like that at the time, I thought. And I was like, I just gotta sell that to them. I just gotta sell them the idea of like, this, like, I can do it, this can be done. So yeah, it was definitely like psyching myself up and being like, I have to make this work because I have nothing else. So I feel like if you go with the mindset of there is no plan B, plan A works because it's the only plan you have. Personally, that's how it worked for me. That's how I approached it.
That's hard. All right, so to get into the main reason why I invited you here today to join us, it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and you have worked with a lot of hip hop artists and brought their visuals to life. So if I could just go down a short list of names of some notables, and you could probably sum up what those experiences were like real quick.
Yeah.
All right, so the first one I have is working with Nav.
What specifically do you want to know? Like,
how that album cover shoot went, how easy he was to work with, if he was more model-like, maybe a little too like cool or stiff, or maybe if he was really realistic with his vibe and it was easy to work with.
Yeah, I mean, Nav was fun. That was a fun shoot. I remember like we rented. I mean, originally the concept that I had pitched was, this was like one of the first like big covers I would say that I was doing. So I wasn't really aware of the production aspect of things. And in my head, I was like, I want to shoot from one building to another building, like a legitimate like office building, and set up like a spotlight and stuff like that. And,
Okay.
you know, production was like, there's no way you can do that. So then
That's a lot of money. It's
so
out of
yeah,
the budget.
yeah, yeah. So then we came down to the solution of like, let's just shoot in like a house and rent out this house, and then we had a lift go up and a spotlight go on the lift. I mean, it was definitely felt like a high production situation,
Right.
when it was, but it was fun. And yeah, Nav is, I would say, he's very introverted, so
Okay.
like he was definitely more on the, I don't want to say like on the like he's too cool side. He was just definitely more on the reserve, and like you have to guide him here and there, which works for me because a lot of my photography, I tend to not necessarily post people very dramatically, so he definitely fit in my world. And then the creative for that was more on Lamar, who does usually the creative around EXO and that label, and then yeah, he was more or less like, you know, we've done stuff in the past with Nav that deals with neon and stuff like that, and we want to sort of like follow that up into this project, which was Bad Habits, into this specific project. So I more or less had to grab from that and be like, okay, what else can I add to it, and, you know, make it feel like a cohesive thing to his catalog. So,
Dope. Considering that's specific shoot sounds like more of a makeshift situation, seeing that the label was kind of like, no, we can't do all that.
all shoots go like that. I'm not gonna lie to you.
How quick are you with setting up, and do you roll with a team, or is it you just pulling up by yourself to do these shoots?
Oh, it's definitely not being by myself.
Okay.
Early on when I started photography, it definitely was me. Like I would be the one, I would carry trash bags full of like bowls that you can set up as lights and light bulbs and stuff from Home Depot, and I would just do all of it. But even now to this day, even if it's just like a small shoot that I'm doing randomly with like a friend, I usually, well, now I know people, so now I can just be like, hey, John, I need a light, and can you bring this up? Or like, you know, I need some set design, what do you advise to this other person and stuff like that. So like I've learned over the years, like it definitely makes it better if you have a team,
Right.
Because everybody's good at their own thing. You know, I can't be the only one. I have a vision and I have an idea, and I usually am the one guiding them. But it definitely helps to have that support. And then for that NAV shoot, that was one of the early album cover shoots that I did. So that was all first time team, if I remember correctly. But yeah, everything was great. The producers that were part of that, I still talk to them to this day, and they're very nice friends. And yeah, super helpful, super great team.
But then to speak to that trash bag worth of stuff you said you used to carry around,
Yeah.
would you say it lessened because times changed and technology improved and, you know, things kind of got consolidated and downsized? Or would you say it was because maybe you said, I don't really need this as much, and you kind of stripped it away yourself, you know? Like you found different pieces of gear that's like, this is really the main things.
I would say it's more or less that I found it, I can make the image better if I have a team. That's how I approached it. And the reason for that is there's like, for example, there, like my friend John, he's a gaffer, and he has access to lights that I don't have, you know? And so it's easier for me to be like, and also he's just down to always do creative stuff with me. So it's easier for me to be like, look, this is the idea I have. This is what I want to do. And then, you know, it's better if it's like he has his own input. And that's something that I learned working with a team, is that I like when people bring their own inputs, even if it's a set designer or like a gaffer or, you know, a stylist or whatever. And like I'll have an idea and I'll have something. But then sometimes, even on set, sometimes even a PA, a production assistant, will be like, hey, this angle looks sick. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I would have never seen that because I was so caught up tunnel vision into like this other area that I wanted to capture.
But that's what they hire you for, you know what I'm saying? That's they
Right,
hire the pros.
I mean, they
you
still
know
get
what
that.
Yeah.
They get both, basically.
They get something extra for their money.
They get extra for sure.
The second artist I want to get into is Destroy Lonely, which I believe is your latest like editorial shoot that you've done.
Yeah,
so could you talk to that?
Yeah, this like how that shoot went creatively? Or?
Yeah, how it came about, how it went creatively. Was he another introvert, kind of just reserved? Because I feel like that's how he presents his brand. Or was he, you know, like a fun time and just equally up for anything you were up for?
Yeah, that was definitely a fun time. He's definitely reserved, introverted, I would say.
Okay.
But he's not like serious. Like we were joking around on set a lot, so that was fun. And then the creative for that was more or less like a very, very modernized sort of homage to like old school films, like black and white films, a couple of frames specifically, which were really fun to recreate like via CG and with him and his team and stuff. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed about that shoot was that he has a song called No Stylist.
Right.
And so for this specific shoot, it was like very, very, very like in bold lettering, you know, on email threads and even on set, like nobody styles.
Like don't touch him.
Yeah, he styles himself.
Right.
And like he lived up to that, which was really
cool. He came dressed up already, or he
dressed himself up.
He showed up ready for the shoot.
Well, he showed up ready for the shoot, and obviously there's different outfits in like some of the images.
Okay.
But
you ain't see him in like sweatpants and a baggy.
But he changes himself. Okay. Like he styles himself. Like there was no stylist on set. Usually, like if you shoot with a celebrity or a talent, they'll have like a stylist team.
Yeah. And
they are the ones that advise like this is what you should wear and stuff.
You gotta end up talking to them as well, just. Like...
Yeah. But yeah, there was no stylist in this, so like he definitely lived up to that.
That's dope. The third artist I want to get into is the Ski Mask, the Slum God Sin City cover. Because between that and then the Destroy Lonely shoot, where you said you referenced older movies, and now Sin City isn't too old. I think it's like early 2000s that movie came out.
It's
the adaptation of the comic book.
Yeah.
So like, could you get into that cover as well as, are you kind of like a guy who keeps a lot of DVDs and like kind of old like footage? Because I was wondering, like, you don't seem like you're too into like the new cinema and like kind of all the fuzzy warm lighting. Like it's really dynamic and sharp, your lighting choices.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into all kinds of cinema. I one of the things I learned as a creative is like to not restrict yourself. Don't box yourself to just a specific thing. I like taking inspiration from everything.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love is like music, graphic novels, comic books, video games, films, you know, things like that. So I definitely don't just look at photography for inspiration. But yeah, I mean, that cover was fun. The creative was fun. I didn't specifically come up with the creative. I don't necessarily know who came up with the creative. I think because he has a manager, Tariq. I don't know if he came up with it, but he's the one that approached me with it. Or Mark. There was another guy. He might have been the one, Mark Gerald. But yeah.
Are you a fan of Hitchcock? I'm just curious.
Yeah, but I haven't seen all his movies.
Oh, okay.
But I am a fan of Hitchcock. I'm definitely more of like a Kubrick guy.
Okay.
That's the guy that I guess I would.
Like Clockwork Orange and
Clockwork Orange, Shining, Eyes Wide Shut. Like,
classics.
I would say like his films is what like really guided my photography.
But yeah, how was it working with Ski Mask? Like, what was his personality like, and how was it?
Yeah. Ski Mask is definitely more extroverted. On the more extroverted side. At least that's how I took it.
Do you have a lot to say, kind of during your time with him, or?
I don't necessarily think he like had a lot to say, but he was definitely more on the having fun on set.
Okay.
You know, so it was definitely one of the more chill environments, and it was just fun all around. Like it wasn't like strict or anything. But for that shoot, I don't have a stack of DVDs, but I do have a lot of graphic novels and comic books. So when they approached me with the Sin City, I was like, this is great because I love graphic novels. So I actually ended up buying the art book that like the illustrator Frank Miller did for Sin City, and I was like just looking at how it translates, because it's so much different how a graphic novel translates to photography, because a graphic, like especially for Frank Miller's art style, like it's very detailed between the black and the whites, and if you were to do that in photography, it's really hard just because the blacks tend to be a lot of empty space.
Right.
So it was just trying to find the balance of like, okay, how much lead detail do you use? But I feel like we nailed it. We got like a good middle ground between like the modern and also capturing the essence of what Sin City was or is.
That's actually a very difficult thing to do, because I remember seeing that movie and I was thinking like, yo, how did they shoot all this without the camera getting too grainy and kind of?
Yeah.
How was it shooting A$AP Rocky?
A$AP was fun, and that was the first big shoot that I did with a celebrity. That was the thing that snowballed everything into everything else. And one of the things that I loved about A$AP to this day is he's very involved with the creative when it comes to the shoot. Like he is right there with you when like he wants to see the sketches and he wants to see what the angle is like, and he also wants to see like what are you adding to the frame and stuff like that.
He's just as much of a director and creative director as you are.
And you know what? Like I'm actually working with another artist right now, and she's very involved too. Where I'm like, oh, this feels just like that. Like, and I love that. I love when an artist gets involved because then it feels like they actually care about what's gonna come out, as opposed to just like, you know, there's my cover and like just do. And
it makes you more interested in what you're doing.
Because then it feels like, you know, they're there to back you up if you some sort of like creatively, if you need a backup in terms of like oh, I think this shot will be sick, and then they'll back you up in terms of like, I want to do that because he wants to do that, and that will be a sick shot. Back off and then they sort of push the narrative
people around. Okay,
which is really awesome.
That was a shoot with like the car, right, and the crash dummies. How much do you cover with like the set design at all? Do you like talk to those people beforehand, or are you kind of just showing up and hoping it's there as you've planned?
I definitely talk to them beforehand. I mean, one of the things that I do now, because I find it to be easier, is sketch things out. And I can't draw, but I'll do like stick figures. Sure. And then I'll just like sketch something out and basically paint the scene as best as I can for set designer. That way I can, when I show it to them, I'm like, you know, this is the camera, this is the angle, this is what I want on the frame, and like, you know, I want like a bed here or a car here and a dummy here and all this stuff. That's basically what I ended up doing for the Rocky stuff. Like I basically sketched it out or did like Photoshop mock-ups, and that's how they sort of got the idea of like, okay, this is like what he wants to do and like how the frame is gonna look and stuff like that. And it doesn't necessarily come down to like it has to look exactly like what I pictured, because like I said earlier, I like it when I can show that to a set designer, and then the set designer is like, okay, dope, let's do that, and also what if we added this or did this to it as well, because then it just makes the image better.
Dope. So yeah,
it's
good to know that you're pretty thorough and involved, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. It can be exhausting sometimes.
I mean, it's worth it because the product is great.
But I mean, I love it. I love being very involved in every single aspect of the photography as much as I can be, just because I really do care. Like, that's ultimately where I find a lot of I would say joy or self-fulfillment when it comes to that stuff. It's just the aspect of making sure that I made an image that I'm proud of, that I can show and be like, I'm proud of that. You know what I mean? It's not just another image for the sake of being another image.
Dope. So the question that comes to mind now, just to take a slight left, not a steep left, but there's like a stigma around working with hip-hop artists because, you know, they might not pay their creative team properly, and you're saying you're a passionate person. I see the passion in your work and how you present yourself today. So it's like, how do you separate that passion from the business side? Did you have difficulties early on by like not getting what you're worth, and, you know, kind of just like, no, this is what my stuff is worth? Did you kind of downplay yourself at first, or like, how did you get to that point?
I definitely did. I mean, I feel like it's
a rite of passage.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like every person that doesn't know the industry downplays themselves because they just don't know how to negotiate something, or they don't necessarily know how to like approach something. You know, like, how do you, if you've never been a part of it and you don't have anybody to guide you, then like, how do you actually start? Like, what do you say? And it's actually very interesting because now I've had friends, you know, reach out to me and be like, you know, how should I negotiate? And like, they come to me for advice, and I'm more than happy to offer it to them just because I've been there. So like, I know what it is to be like a starting artist and, you know, not know, you know, how to deal with labels and things like that. But I mean, it was definitely tricky. And then eventually over time, I would say that the way I learned is at a certain point, I ended up getting a manager or an agent. And throughout that whole period, I would ask them like, CC me on the emails,
right? Because
I want to know how you're negotiating. That way I can learn. And that's
I
basically
feel like I should have talked to that man or that lady before I got through I feel like I went straight to it. But yeah, okay. How long have you had the manager?
I don't have one now.
Oh, okay.
But I did have one for like
nobody's in your pocket. That's what's up.
I did have one for like a year or two. But I learned so much. Like, I learned so much when it comes to like talking to labels or talking to clients and, you know, negotiating fees or like what should I charge for and what should be my worth and licensing or buyout fees and things that I had no idea about. Where it was like, oh crap, like I could have been charging all or like, you know, doing way more. Yeah.
So much, so many months of rent.
Yeah.
Being paid off.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I want to talk about, what you mentioned the day I met you at the Warner Music Open House, was your desire to do some type of live exhibit. Is that currently in the works, or are you still kind of just like scheming up how that would look?
It's not in the works. I don't have anything planned in terms of an exhibit. Usually every single exhibit that I have done or where I have shown my work physically or where it's like in prints and stuff like that has always been a group show. And there hasn't been that many necessarily, but I've never done like a solo show. But I would be very interested in, you know, having an exhibit or like the lighting and stuff like that. Like I can envision myself being like, I want the lighting to look like this, and I want the experience for the consumer or the viewer to be like this when they walk in, and they, you know, and the setup to be this way or a certain angle or a certain way. I think a good reference would be, there's this artist called Nadia Lee Cohen. She's based in LA. She's like a director and a photographer, super talented woman. And I don't think her exhibit is up still, but she had an exhibit and it was, I mean, I didn't go to it, but I did see images of it. And it was awesome. And I was like, oh yeah, that looks exactly like something. Where it was like, it felt like an experience as opposed to just a room full of images. If that makes sense.
So less museum and more kind of, this is childish, but like haunted house or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think you can have a balance of both.
Okay.
Like I'm always for like, I mean, obviously you're there to view the images and the art,
Right.
but I think there's a way to make it work where it feels like an experience to elevate the feeling that you get when you're.
You think you have that soundtrack then backed by music? Like
What was that?
whatever exhibit you do have in the future, hopefully in the near future, you feel like that would be like backed by music as well as your images around the area?
I'm not sure, and if there is, I would have to think about this.
I actually didn't even ask you this off camera. What genres of music do you typically listen to? Because you have like covered quite a few hip hop artists with your work, but what do you usually listen to, and how would you say hip hop has impacted your life or maybe influenced your work going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to all kinds of music. Hip hop, rap is definitely one of them for sure. I would say the way that hip hop has influenced me is I like to listen to a lot of thought-provoking hip hop and rap. So like one of my favorite rappers is Nas.
Still to this day with like all his new work?
I would say he actually is my favorite rapper.
Okay.
Not one up, but he is like, I would consider him to be like number one for me. But yeah, to this day, Lupe Fiasco as well. And I one of the things that I like about poetic hip hop is that /rap is that it's very encouraging. I mean, I find it to be very motivational to some degree. In terms of like specific topics they talk about or specific situations and things like that. Just because, you know, being a person from South America, you know, I don't know exactly that experience that they're talking about, but I have definitely struggled in my life, and it definitely motivates me to be like, find the right path where I need to find it to get to where I need to get to.
You kind of relate to those themes as a person from South America, themes of overcoming or navigating struggle and poverty. Okay, that's dope. That's a great connection to draw. So that's pretty much all I have for our standard questions. I want to do a lightning round of quick questions, something simple just to like profile you. This is called the Time Capsule Talk. This is just capture you and your opinions on these things and how you feel right now in the moment.
Do I need to answer them very fast, or can I?
I mean, not to the point where you're stumbling over your words, but like, don't think too hard. You know what I'm saying? There's no pressure. So let me just. Okay. This is a big one. What would you like to be remembered for?
My work, my photography, my work. You want me to just give you like a one answer, or do you want me to go deeper into it?
Whatever you want. capture you, how you feeling right now.
The questions are lightning
you
fast.
You can expound, or do you like, you know what I'm saying?
The questions are lightning fast, but the answers are not.
Yeah.
Got it. My work, my photography, I personally feel like, I mean, I would consider the things that matters the most to me at this moment. And that's what I would want people to, I guess, remember me by, because I do put a lot of myself in it.
Okay. Favorite time of day to work and why?
I guess it could be very obvious based on my work that it would be nighttime. I'm not opposed to daytime either. I mean, I've done work in the daytime, but the reason I would say I pick nighttime, or even just a controlled environment, is just because you can control lighting easier and better. You know, if you shoot in the daytime, if you shoot at a park, there's only so much I can do in the sun, unless obviously you have a budget where you can block the sun and, you know, alter lighting that way. But it's easier at night.
Okay. Place you would live for the rest of your life, regardless of circumstances, and possibly retire to.
Somewhere in Europe. I've always thought about if I wanted to retire somewhere, it would be like somewhere in Europe or Japan or something, like just like on the countryside of it. Like even though my work can tend to be very noisy and dark or intense sometimes, I do appreciate the calmness of it. Like the calmness of like life and, you know, crave for it and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's a good balance, you know what I'm saying? Gotta have the best of both worlds. The next thing I would want to ask is, who is a historical figure that you identify with? Like if you were to be anywhere in time and be another person, who would you probably be?
It can be like filmmakers and stuff like that?
Yeah, of course. Doesn't have to be like Joan of Arc or nothing like that. Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably Stanley Kubrick, just because,
okay.
I mean, he's definitely the one that's influenced literally everything about my visual work. And also, I liked his approach. I mean, one of the things, it's funny, like earlier you asked me about Hitchcock, and I haven't really seen all of Hitchcock films. I've seen a couple, but I've definitely seen a lot of documentaries about Hitchcock. Right. That's one of the things that I like to do, is watch documentaries about filmmakers that I like Hitchcock, Fincher, Kubrick, and things like that, and then figure out their work ethic and how they approach work or life, or how they move along it and stuff like that. So I definitely liked Kubrick's work ethic and his sort of approach in life and things like that. And I would say that's what's influenced me the most in terms of how I approach my work ethic, how I approach my work and life as well.
Okay. Digital or film?
What was that?
Digital or film?
I shoot digital, but I love film. Like, I mean, if I could shoot film, I would shoot film. I've shot film before, but if I could shoot film, I would shoot film. I'm always envious of photographers who shoot film. It looks so beautiful. Texture, the color. Yeah,
it's worth it, definitely, but it's expensive, time consuming to get that.
That's why I don't do it. Yeah. But I would do it otherwise, for sure.
Okay. Last meal of choice. Kind of grim.
Last meal of choice. It has to be an Ecuadorian dish, and it would probably be a meal called sango de camarón, which is like a rice with like peanut butter sauce or something like that, and shrimp.
Favorite cartoon?
Oh man, I don't really watch cartoons like that.
Really, not even growing up, or just imagine the show? You said you were a superhero buff, so I mean, Marvel or DC?
I'd probably say DC.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, watch cartoons like that. I can't really give you.
Okay. Dope. Last question I have for you today is, maybe speaking into existence. Maybe you've already done it. If you have already accomplished this, then obviously don't voice it. You probably wouldn't anyways. But who's someone you would really want to work with and have as your subject?
There's a couple people. But like the most?
Yeah.
I'd probably say Nas.
Nas, okay. Cool.
Just because, yeah, I mean, I really do see him like legend pedestal. Sort of.
You feel like you already have like ideas sketched out of what you would do if you
not necessarily
you got
like
that call?
I mean, not necessarily like an idea sketched out. Because I mean, I feel like if you look at Nas's covers, like in the past, they tend to be more on the minimal side, whereas opposed to my covers tend to sometimes, or my photography tends to get big sometimes. But But it's more or less just like I like working with artists that I like love, and I've done that. I've already done that. And considering I regard him as like, you know, top for me, especially in the hip hop genre, I would say like, yeah, he would definitely be like, yeah. Just like a bucket list situation.
For sure, I definitely get that. Well, thank you so much for coming through today. Like, you got it done, you know what I'm saying, after a while of trying to get this together. And I'm just really grateful that you're doing what you do, because you definitely represent these artists in it's not even words for it, you know what I mean? Like, your work is remarkable, and I hope to see you continue to elevate and go forward and bring your vision to life, man. So thank you for real.
Appreciate you, man. I mean, thank you.
All right. And that was Maroon Radio, everyone. See you next time.